Moving on, India's market for GLP-1 therapies is evolving at a remarkable pace, driven by rising awareness around diabetes and obesity, greater physician adoption, and the arrival of newer treatment options. The latest data from PharmaTrack, tracking secondary sales in the Indian pharmaceutical market, shows the GLP-1 market is expanding to 221.1 crore rupees in June, with tirzepatide continuing to dominate the category with a nearly 59% market share. Now, at the same time, competition is intensifying as generic semaglutide gains traction alongside established brands like Ribelsus, Ozempic, and Wegovy, making this one of the fastest growing segments in the pharmaceutical industry. South India is playing a pivotal role too in that growth story. Telangana has emerged as the region's largest market for your peak, while Kerala has posted the fastest sales growth this year, highlighting the increasing acceptance of GLP-1 therapies across the south. So what do these numbers tell us about changing prescribing behavior? Are these therapies now moving beyond diabetes to become mainstream obesity treatments? And with more brands entering the market, how will competition impact pricing, access, and patient outcomes? To help us decode some of these latest trends and the road ahead for India's GLP-1 market, we're now joined by Dr. Sreenivasamurthy, Governing Council Member at National API. Dr. Murthy, thank you so much for joining us on South Central today. The fact is that the South is seeing a strong adoption of GLP-1 drugs with states like Telangana, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Kerala all emerging as key markets. What's driving this momentum in the region, especially when compared to the rest of the country?
Hi, good evening, and thank you for taking me online. I think the point is, if you see the obesity and diabetes prevalence, India versus state-wise, if you see in India, the diabetes is 11.4% is the prevalence, whereas a state like Kerala has got 25%. Similarly, the obesity part, all India, it's about 28% versus 45% in Kerala. So I think this difference and the educational level about the HCPs being made aware as obesity as a disease, these are the factors which are driving South Indian market. And as it is, I think South India contributes to 20% of the pharma turnover in general, what I know. So that is something which is again driving this in South India, especially Kerala and Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, drives this market.
So the fact is that even as we speak, Kerala is recording the strongest month-on-month growth in June, while Tamil Nadu is seeing a decline after a strong May. Now, I know it's only been 1 month for Tamil Nadu, but given that it is perhaps the only minus on that list, what do these contrasting trends tell you about how demand is evolving across South India?
I think these month-on-month fluctuations should be viewed in the context of a broader trend rather than as a standalone month. But overall, GLP-1 demand across South India is expected to continue growing, and which is driven by the patient awareness. As you can see, the educational levels in our states is much better, and higher adoption rates and a growing recognition among the physicians that obesity is a chronic disease requiring the medical treatment.
And even as we speak, the fact is that the South is also India's pharmaceutical manufacturing hub, especially a state like Telangana and a city like Hyderabad. How well positioned are API manufacturers in Hyderabad, for instance, or even other South Indian clusters in order to benefit from the upcoming wave of generic GLP-1 drugs?
To be frank, I don't have enough insights into the API manufacturing landscape to comment on that. But definitely, given the region's strong pharmaceutical manufacturing ecosystem, what we have in South India, it is likely to be an area to be watched as the market evolves, especially because of the generic brands.
Right. And the fact is that even as demand for obesity therapies actually goes about accelerating, what investments are API companies now making in peptide manufacturing, and how much of that capacity do you expect to take form and shape right here in South India, given that the region is already a massive pharma hub for the rest of the country?
I think I do not have the visibility into the investment plans of these API manufacturers to comment, to be frank, being a clinician.
Okay, let's move on then. We're also seeing competition intensify with newer brands gaining market share. How do you see pricing, accessibility, and patient adoption actually changing over the next couple of years, sir?
We definitely expect pricing to remain broadly stable following the entry of semaglutide generics. Just to be on record, about 55 companies have launched in our country, and I don't think there'll be any further significant rise disruption which is anticipated. It has come to the rock bottom, and the bigger opportunity lies in expanding access and adoption of these generic ones by the HCPs. That is what is going to drive this sales in the coming years. As patient awareness of obesity is as a chronic cardiometabolic disease, now it is increasing, and more HCPs are embracing the evidence-based treatment. All these years, we never had these kind of treatment options to treat chronic disease like obesity. But today, these GLP-1s have been growing steadily, driving broader market penetration over the years. And HCPs are clear that now the affordability of the patients and then the innovative brands like Urpic and Mounjaro and Ozempic, these are the things which are for non-affording patients. There are generic options. For people who are affordable, there are always these innovative brands.
You spoke about accessibility, sir. So I have to ask you, beyond the metros itself, which are perceived as being top markets for GLP-1 drugs, are Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities in South India also beginning to drive the next phase of growth? Or do you think demand is still more or less concentrated in urban centers?
Yes, Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities are increasingly emerging as the next phase of growth for the GLP-1 market. And while demand was initially concentrated in the major metros, the rising awareness, improved access, especially about the digitalization of our Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, and greater HCP adaptation are driving this uptake in the Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. Our experience with Urpic supports this trend. If you see this, with more than 50% of the prescriptions coming in the last Tier 2, 3 cities are from these brands, and which demonstrates that demand is already extending well beyond the major cities. As more companies enter this category and awareness of obesity as a chronic disease continues to grow, I'm sure we'll expect the Tier 2, Tier 3 markets to contribute increasingly a significant share to this GLP-1 market in due course.
Tier 2, Tier 3 cities that you are actually seeing the most promise from? Are we looking at, let's say, in Tamil Nadu or Madurai, Coimbatore, perhaps a Vizag in Andhra? Are we looking at Mysuru, Mangaluru in Karnataka? Where do you think the top markets for GLP-1 drugs could lie as far as Tier 2 South India is concerned?
I think given the higher prevalence of obesity, I gave you in the initial remarks the obesity prevalence in India versus in Kerala, one state just to compare. So this higher prevalence of obesity and related cardiometabolic diseases in the region, especially in South India, has the potential to become one of the largest markets for GLP-1 therapeutics in India. Growing awareness, stronger HCP adoption, and increasing acceptance of this obesity as a chronic metabolic diseases are expected to further accelerate this demand. And on the manufacturing side, I do not have sufficient visibility to comment whether South India can emerge as a global hub for this APIs. But definitely, we have more FDA-approved plants here compared to the other places. And effort from both government and industry is needed for public health initiatives where it should focus on increasing awareness that obesity is a chronic disease and with a significant health consequences, rather than a cosmetic concern. That is another angle which people are looking at it now, obesity. But we should encourage early diagnosis and treatment. At the same time, the pharmaceutical industry also should continue to support the physicians' education through evidence-based scientific engagements and helping clinicians to identify the right patients in an early stage so that we can optimize long-term outcomes. And this will be definitely critical in driving responsible adaptation and, of course, improving the patient health at a scale.
Right. So awareness aside, though, what kind of policy or industry support do you think is still needed to make that happen?
I think the industry one is awareness to the clinicians. Second one is awareness to the public. I think both should go hand in hand because we face a lot of reluctance and objections or resistance from the patient side when we talk about the obesity part. And when we say it is a chronic disease, they say I've been from 40 years from my birth, I've been obese like this. So that is where the patients and resistance is increasing. But at the same time, because his neighbor or a friend or aunt, uncle are taking these medications, so now people are voluntarily coming to ask for this therapy. And that's what, as these GLP-1 markets have changed the perception of obesity from the patient's angle.
Well, they don't call it a miracle drug for nothing. And the fact is that South India is all set to boom and grow as far as GLP-1 drugs are concerned. On that note, so thank you so much for joining us and breaking down some of these insights. Great having you with us here on South Central.
Thank you. Thank you. Good day.
Right, moving on.